Okay, let's start with the Inventor stuff. Today I want to do a couple things. One, I don't want to talk the entire time. Hey guys, the people shouting across the room, let's just nod. I want to show you more of the geometric constraints, and then I'm going to show you trim and extend, and then I'm going to have you guys build some sketches so you get a little bit better with building sketches, right? So start thinking that. And we may talk about how to break down a model into component extrudes, and then that's kind of the plan for today. All right, so if you got Inventor, let's do new part. Bring up a new part. Let me shut off half of the lights so we can see the screen. All right, and then go ahead and go into a sketch and go into any sketch that you want or any sketch plane that you want. And then let's throw in some lines kind of like that, and let's do a couple of circles, and let's make another line. Why not? What else we need to do? And then I'll do a fourth line. Why not, right? So do 4 lines and 2 circles, and that'd be a good start for us. And then just to throw a monkey into the mix, let's do one more line. Okay, so from that, let's start talking about the geometric constraints. Remember that we can totally go in and just hover without moving our mouse, and it's going to tell us what it means, right? We're going to start with coincidence, right? And basically coincident basically says like, hey, so you click it, right? And then you say, hey, I want that to touch that, right? And it will totally make those coincidents. And then forever and evermore, they will touch, right? So if you modify it, if you move it, right, it is totally going to go ahead and change. So the next one I'll show you, I'm going to try to probably just go in a straight line. So we did coincident. Now we're going to go 1 over, right? And this is, if it will pop up, right? It is collinear, right? So they are lines that are the same line, right? So if we click that, right? So you click the icon, right? And I'm going to say, hey, this line and this line lie on the same line. So now when you do that, right? So they occupy the same line. In geometry, you guys have done this, collinear. Next one is this one, which is, I forget the names, I know what they do, concentric. All right, the way concentrics work, this is circles, so that's why it's here. It basically says, hey, share the same center point. So I'm going to say, hey, share the same center point, you two. All right, next one. We're down on the next row. This one here is locked. I never used it, but if you just want to lock, because it's not really good practice, if you just want to lock a piece of geometry and say never ever move, that's what that's for. But if we click on this one, this is parallel, right? So if you remember back to geometry, 2 lines that if you extend them infinitely, forever, extend them forever, they will never touch, right? And so that's the definition of parallel, right? So if you click the 2 lines, these are now parallel. And if you extend them forever and ever, they will not touch, right? And then you can go ahead and you can move them, right? And so now notice, right? I have several constraints, right? This is always in line with this, and this is always parallel to this. And so when I move it, because it's still not fully constrained, right, what's happening, right? Several things are moving. And then by this time, you're probably being able to like figure these out on your own, right? And you're going through. This one is perpendicular, 90 degrees. So this is 90 degrees to that. And then I'm going to go a little bit quicker on these next ones because we've covered them kind of yesterday, right? We had horizontal. Right, so you can say, hey, make this one horizontal. Now, when I do this, what's going to happen to 3, 4 other lines? Right, they're all going to go with it because we've constrained them, right? So this is going to be 90 degrees to this, but this is parallel to this, right? So when I say this is horizontal, they're all going to move, right? Same thing, I hit escape, and then I'll hit vertical, and I'll say this one's vertical, and then now that is vertical. Now, if yours jumps off your screen or something when you do that, that's cool. I mean, that's fine. Don't get upset. And then the last ones, right? So just a couple of last ones. We have this one, which is tangent, all right? So we're going to have a line touch a circle or an arc and only be in one spot. All right, so it's only going to touch in one place. In this case, it's going to, I'm going to say that, touches that, only in one spot. And because it hasn't been defined, the circle got bigger. I bet you thought that was going to move. You never know which one's going to happen, but it only touches in one spot. Right, and then we'll jump to equal. We did that yesterday. You can say two things are equal in length to one another, so that is equal to that in length. Right, notice that they're not aligned, right? They are not aligned, but they are exactly the same length. If I go M to measure and measure that one, that's 8, 8, 9, and if I go to measure that one, that's 8, 8, 9. All right, so they are the same length. If we want those to be lined up, we can go back to our coincident and say, well, we don't want them to touch. Sorry, go back to our vertical constraint and say this point is vertical to this point. Right, now it pulls it over. Right, so your lines can be have constraints applied to them. Points, midpoints can all have constraints applied to them. All right, now we all have a giant mess on our screen. It's handy to delete it so we can do the next thing. The way Inventor deletes is kind of neat. All right, so let's click, well, the way it selects so we can delete. All right, so let's click and drag to the right, right, and you get a red. Right, and just go over a couple of them completely and then some of them not completely. Because what happens with that is when you click and drag to the right, when it turns red, right, only the things that are wholly inside the red will be selected. So in this case, I'm going to select those 3 lines. Right? If I click and drag to the left, it turns green, and anything I cross, anything that touches the green gets selected. All right, so play for that for a second, because that is super handy when you need to delete something and to be very, deliberate about it. Like, I just want to get these 3. We'll do it that way. Right? I want to get everything. We'll do it that way. Right? And then pick which way you want to do it. And then hit the delete key. And then once you delete it, right, go up here, right, don't do anything else once you delete it. Go up here and hit this little arrow, or you can do Control Z. But this is undo, right? It is super handy. Oops, I screwed up the last thing I did. I want to undo. Right, because what I want to show you, right, is down here at the bottom, right? There's this little icon, and it's F9, right, if you want a shortcut. But there's a little icon right here. The first one is snap to the grid. I never turn the grid on, right? But the second one is show and hide constraints, right? So if you click it, right, and you may have to click it twice to get it to cycle through, right? It's going to show all the constraints that you have put in. So if you put in one that you want to change, like, hey, you know what? I really don't want this one to be 90 degrees. You can go to it, find it, click it, hit delete, right? And then now that is no longer constrained to 90 degrees, right? This is super helpful for when you get those messages that say, hey, you've over constrained it because it can't be 90 degrees and parallel simultaneously. All right. So then you can turn those off to get them out of your way. Okay. And then once you do that, you can delete everything, and we're going to do one more thing. Okay, last thing. Let's go ahead and let's draw a vertical line from the origin. That is going to be our mirror axis. And then let's just do a line at an angle on this side and a line at a different angle on this side. Right? Because the last one I'm going to show you is the mirror or symmetric constraint. You can think of it as a mirror constraint as well. All right, so if you click it, right, in Inventor, right, if it's a multi-step command, they will give you instructions down here at the bottom left, all right? So it says, hey, pick the first sketch element, okay? I want that. And then it says, hey, select the second sketch element. That is that, right? And then it says, hey, add the symmetry line. And notice your cursor there, right? It's giving you the little picture that says, hey, I need the line of symmetry. So here's my line of symmetry. And then now, I'm going to hit escape to get out of that command, right? Now these are symmetric. They're not the same length, right? They're not exactly mirrored, but they do have symmetry around this axis, right? And if you change that axis, right, what happens? It is, so I'll do that again because that one's a little confusing. Oops, went too far. Went too far. Forward, forward. So this is undo, undo. I forget what's called. Redo. There we go. And so we're going to use symmetric right here. Click the first line. Click the second line. Click the axis of symmetry. It's that one right there. All right. So if you have this stuff up here, right, you can totally, we can say, what I want to do. Let's like we can just say finish, and then we can just go up here to the sketch and right click and say delete, and I'll just delete the whole sketch. And let's talk about, so I went to Google and said, hey, give me some isometric drawing exercises. And then I found this guy who has a website, right? And he has this part. So the last thing I want to talk about, right, is we need to start thinking about how we're going to create things, and then additive or subtractive processes, all right? And then at the same time, also doing this very, very efficiently. Because I could totally build, right? I could totally build a rectangle, right? And then cut this slot out, and then build another rectangle, and then cut this hole out. But is that the most efficient way to do it? Probably not, right? What's probably the most efficient? Right? So if it was me, I could do it in 3 features. And then sometimes later on, we're going to play games of who can do it in the least amount of features, right? I would do it as an L, right? And then I would cut the slot and then cut the square hole, right? So I could do it in 3 features, right? If you start breaking it down, right, you could probably do it in 2, right? But it wouldn't be quite as easy. You could make this section and then add on this section. That's probably the least amount that you could do that.
Is it embedded in the
right? So now we got these really funny high numbers. Do we think those are in millimeters or freedom units? Probably millimeters, right? So we'd have to think about how to switch that over. All right, so you don't have to follow along. We're gonna throw this in super quick over here just because you can kind of see how additive and subtractive processes work. So we're gonna start the 2D sketch. All right, I'm gonna pick this one because I'm gonna do the L first. It works with my brain. It is not the most efficient way to do it. The other thing, right, if we go back and look at our part, right, the whole length is 46 and 32, right? So we're gonna go here, right, and we can say 46 plus 32, right? And notice I haven't clicked yet. Like, I totally haven't clicked yet, but I started typing, right? And so now I've made a line that is however many long, right? But what did I forget to do? Forgot to change it to millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go finish, right? I'm going to delete that sketch, right? And then I'm going to go tools, document settings, and then go to my units and say, hey, we are using the measurement system that literally the rest of the world does, and we'll say okay, right? And so now we'll go back to our sketch, and then we will say that, and then we'll make our line, right? And so notice when you make this, if you go out to the right there and say 70, right, it will make a line 70 millimeters long. It's helpful to make sure it's the right, and then we're going to be 50 up, so 50. And what's our thickness here? Don't know if they have thickness labeled. Sweet. There's a lot of 18s. Guess what we're going to use? 18. Why not? So we'll come out 18. And then I don't want to do the math here, so I'm going to go over like that and over like that. I feel like this is short. What did we do wrong? That's 70 and that's 50. Wow, this perspective is weird. Oh, it's not 70, it's 80. 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, it's 77 or 6, 7, 8, 78. Math is not my strong suit. There we go. That looks better, right? And so we're going to use our constraints and say, hey, that is equal to that because we got that one done. And that's looking good. And then we're going to finish, right? And then we're going to say, hey, this is whatever 18 times 3 is, right? And so we're going to say extrude, right? And then we're going to say 18 times 3. Right, make it do the math for you, and then we're going to go in, right, and then we're going to say, hey, on this face, make a sketch, throw your rectangle in, right, I'm going to say this is going to be equal to this because it's totally a square, that is 18, and I assume it's 18 and 18, all right, so that's going to be to there. That's okay. The whole point is I'm kind of showing you the idea behind, that is not the right dimension, the idea behind how to do additive and subtractive, right? So how I would approach making this, because guess what model you're totally doing tomorrow? That one, right? Looks like they're just shoving it in the center of that. Right, so they're shoving it in the center. You can do the math, or I can make a line from the midpoint of this to the midpoint of this one. It's not picking it up. Right, well, anyway, we're running out of time. Let's extrude that. We would have to let's cut it, and let's say, hey, all the way through. Right, I didn't fully dimension that. You should totally do that. And then we'll do this one, and we will add in our rectangle. Now the cool thing is, since we know those are the same, we could, right, say project geometry, I want that projected on there. So that will give me my links, right, and I haven't showed you that, but you can totally lay it in by hand, right? But if you do it this way, right, now that is there, it's going to snap to it, and so now you can lay that in like that, however far back that goes, 46. Right, you'd make that all black and then extrude, and then we're going to cut, and then we're going to say through all, and then that part is done except for we haven't defined everything, okay? And that's it. So that's what you're going to do tomorrow. The other cool thing, right, last bit, the other cool thing is if you need to go back and change any of these, right, or if you want to step through how this part was constructed, right, your model tree records everything that you have done, right? And so you can hover over it and see what it belongs to, right? So I cut the square and then I cut the slot, right? I can go back in, I can say right click edit feature and change the feature, or I could right click and say edit sketch and go in and change my sketch and say, hey, you know what? I never actually gave that any dimensions, so maybe we should do that. All right, and say this is really 18. And this is really 18. Right, now it's fully defined. So you can go back and change things as you do them.